She's here. Been pretty steady. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 4 o'clock, so we'll call this work session in Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. Mr. Tullis, you want to give us an update on our second quarter initiatives?
Mayor, council members, our Q2 goals, much like last meeting, we're on track with everything except for this working out on some information from our animal welfare advocates is what we have on here. But looking at the options for a no-kill animal shelter or some other arrangement that would meet that intent. So I think we're probably going to miss that goal this quarter. And
so that's the specific. Let's see.
Should be the third bullet down on your
presentation of requested information from Animal Welfare Act. Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
So other than that, our goals seem to be on track. Completing the 3B paving project that was supposed to be done this week, and I think weather had something to do with that, so it's been pushed to next week.
I keep riding by there and wondering what's going on. So
but that parking lot's all that we're waiting on to finish that out, and then of course we'll have a punch list. After that, some striping and other things to clean up within the project, but substantial completions there with no other issues. We had a meeting with Public Building Authority last week on the 9th. That went well. Public Building Authority seems receptive to helping the council look for solutions for City Hall. I think we basically got the next 2 to 3 weeks to work out another meeting with Public Building Authority and make a recommendation to them on a path ahead. But preliminary estimates on that look like that we would be able to save a substantial amount of money based on the bids that came back in. And we'll brief you more on that when we have a proposal to take to the Public Building Authority, hopefully at the first meeting in June, to bring back to them, assuming that you're on board with it. If you're not, obviously we won't take that recommendation back to the Public Building Authority. The other 2 that are on here of note, we're going to have a site visit for the wayfinding group the 17th and 18th, so tomorrow and Thursday. So that group will be coming in to do a driving tour, see some of our sites, talk about what options the city is looking to promote, which routes, and actually see and put eyes on those facilities and roadways. So that'll be this week. And then tonight here with us, we have Ben Goldman with Hand Arundel to talk about land bank and redevelopment authorities. So he'll probably take 45 minutes to an hour of your time tonight to talk about those 2 issues. Everything else is on track or complete at this point.
All right. Any questions, Jonathan, regarding our second quarter initiatives? All right. Thank you. All right. Briefly, we're going to turn over to our agenda review for tonight's regular council meeting. So if you would turn to me in your big packet. I guess there's been one change to this, right, Beverly? Yes. So we, which Jonathan can brief us on it later, but he removed it was the first item in new business, wasn't it? The hangar building, right? So do you want to brief us on that now, why we removed that, or just okay, go ahead.
So Mayor and Council, we took that off the agenda. We had bids that came in and they were roughly in line. One of the projects that we were working on and had in mind for construction of that hangar, we found out that project was off the table at this point. And so as a result of that, we would like some time, maybe just 2 weeks. It could be back on the agenda at your next council meeting, but to look at what the other options are for use of that facility. we had designed it in a way to accommodate, more than just the primary thought, which was an economic development project we briefed the council on, but as more of a corporate hangar as kind of a fallback. But based on the bids and what the market rates are right now, Barry Mott and I thought about going back over the next 2 weeks and putting together some numbers on what that would look like if we reduced the size of the hangar, potentially, or if we could make the economics work at all. So essentially what we looked at, based on current market rate rents and potential tenant mix that would go into that hangar space right now, which it was designed to be a spec building. But if it was to be a corporate hangar, we think that the city would be in the negative about $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And so we're going to look at that and look at other items on there and see what your intent is behind that. So over the next 2 weeks, we should have a better idea of what those numbers look like and want to present that to you so you can make an informed decision about how best to spend those dollars.
All right. Any questions specifically about that? So we've removed that item. No action will be taken on tonight. All right. Starting at the top here, of course, we'll have a roll call, opening prayer, and pledge of allegiance. Approve the agenda. We'll approve it as submitted because that deletion's already been made on what's been submitted here. Then we've got the consent agenda, which consists of work session minutes, council meeting minutes, both from May 2nd. Then we got some contract billings regarding the rec center for Whaley Construction, Wiregrass Construction for the resurfacing phase 3A. Is that the last of that, Glenn? Okay. Gotcha. For 3A. Good. All right, then Beasley for the multi-purpose fields out at the community college. Then we've got Poly Incorporated for the same project. Invoice for that. Ewing Connor for the CDBG demolition project. Contract billing for that. And asbestos surveys for the same project to Southern Earth Sciences, and our monthly invoice from Fine Getty for our state governmental affairs contract. Any questions on those contract billings? Then we've got some travel requests from E911 and tourism as listed there. Then we'll move to privilege of the floor and staff reports before moving to old business, which is the sidewalk rehab project. Barry, no one else bid on this. I assume you've added the unit prices we got on this.
I did. That's the same contractor that bid on this project was the one that completed the previous project. And I looked at previous bids from last year. They're in line with what I would expect to see as bid prices, unit prices for this year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on that?
We sure weren't happy with him and his work on the last project, were we?
The actual concrete work was pretty good. The cleanup and the follow through and the punch out was a completely different issue, and we addressed that during the pre-bid and then also at the bid opening. I talked about that both. That we will close out each phase of this, Mr. Councilman, to make sure that when we get through with the thing, we're not moving to another sidewalk until they're done with that one and clean it up, and that is clearly understood. Yes, sir. We remind you, we did not get a bid the first time. We reopened it again and expanded the time and got one bid in, so it has been difficult to find people that will want to bid on our sidewalk projects. Yes, sir. So in that item, please understand that we last year we opened up a bid for concrete to provide the concrete. That's a contract between the city and the concrete company. This is purely for labor to demo and replace it back. So we've got a budget line item for that. What we'll do is there's a quantity unit price that was in that labor for demolition and to put back. But what we'll do is we'll watch those 2 unit prices as we watch our concrete prices come in from the concrete supplier in the labor, so we maximize up to the budget that we have allowed for this budget year.
So you think we can complete this project this budget year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. we may not do all 20,000 square feet. Just to be clear, we may end up with 18,000 square feet. We'll maximize as much as we can up to the budget amount that we have allowed in
Gotcha.
there. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for sidewalk rehab?
What's the areas, the targeted areas for the rehab?
So the areas that we're preliminary looking at is anything in that downtown area adjacent to Main Street and one block off, especially in areas where we've done the parking lots. We're on Easy Street and the one with the Methodist Church. Anywhere that we have off-site parking to get people back down to Main Street, those are areas that we'll look at first. And after we look at those, then we'll determine how far we can push this back. But there's no predetermined locations other than I know of 2 or 3 areas that we've had some tripping hazards already that was reported to our office, and they're in those corridors for Main Street or one block off of Main
So
Street.
it's safe to say if there's a lot of yellow stripes on those sidewalks, that's probably a targeted area if it's around those parking areas.
Yes, sir. We also, if you remember about a year ago, we went in and did some grinding on some of those areas. Some areas that wasn't worthy of taking the concrete up, we did some grinding to smooth down those tripping hazards. We've done those. So the ones we have now are the significant slabs that are left. Ones that we can't go in there and just grind them off. We're going to take those slabs up and replace them. And our intention is to make them look good, but if we have 2 blocks that are just destroyed, we're going to repair those 2 blocks and move off and try to use those square yardage, square footage quantities that we have to maximize that around the downtown.
Any other questions regarding the sidewalk rehab project? All right, thanks, Barry.
Yes, sir.
Next item is, we'll move into new business, is the sewer utilities relocation on Highway 167. So, Glenn, you want to explain this to us?
Yes, what you have is a supplemental agreement number 4. There's a resolution and an actual agreement in there. It's got all the details in it. But this is for the relocation of the sewer project on Highway 167 North for the widening project. The contractor, just to give you a little update on where the contractor is, the sewer is actually all laid and tied in. So at this point, the contractor's doing closeout stuff. He's got to abandon some old sewer, clean up some inverts and that type of thing. But actually, the sewer's actually in the new line, so he's got it laid. But he still projects that it'll probably be middle of June before he's completely finished. So this supplemental agreement basically is for engineering, phase 3 engineering services, construction engineering services, because he is beyond what we anticipated him being complete date-wise. So there's some betterment in this. The bulk of this will be covered by the state. It's like an 87%, 13% split, 87% by the state, which will put the city's cost at about $2,457. This is an hourly agreement, so obviously we may not use all this. I was a little conservative on this, so hopefully we'll come in under this and won't use all this amount anyway. So, but that's what that's for.
So you expect the actual expense of the city being $2,400?
Max on this, that's correct.
Any questions of Glenn on this? All right. Next item is to authorize the mayor to execute a grant agreement. This is for the hangar project that we just discussed.
It is, and so it's kind of counterintuitive. I think the next 2 items there deal with the airport hangar. We took it off to award the bid, but we were asking permission for the mayor to execute a grant agreement with ALDOT for $500,000. So we were fortunate that ALDOT selected the city for a $500,000 grant. I think that's probably the largest for a project like this that they've given. So that is a straight grant of $500,000. At this point, if we decide we're not going to move forward with the hangar, we can give that back. There's no penalty, no issues. If we decide to move forward, though, we would like to have the mayor the opportunity to execute that agreement and receive the funds to help pay for that hangar.
That's a 50-50.
It is, but the hangar price, and we can change the scope of the hangar.
As long as it's over $1 million, we get the $500,000.
Correct. Subsequently, we also have on here authorized execute professional service agreement. We have already executed and designed a hangar, and so that's what that authorization is for, is to pay them for those services as well as bid services that went along with the bid that we had for the hangar. So those are for services already rendered.
All right. Any questions about these 2 hangar agenda items? All right, moving on, we've got an ABC license request from Fort Lord Brewing. We'll just introduce that tonight, no action. Then a request permission to purchase equipment for Parks and Rec infield machine. Billy, is this a budgeted item, correct?
That's correct.
Any questions of Billy on this infield machine? All right. We've got a street lighting modification of $167 a month for Coon Street, Andrew Street, Clay Road, and David Road. Barry, anything we need to know on this street light?
The request came in through the mayor's office to look at some city streets that did not have lighting on it, and this is per all the other agreements that we do within the city. So we reached out and did a quick study for location of lights and reached out to get a price. So this is in line with what we do with all other city streets that have a request. It just comes to you for approval prior to us adding that to our contract.
And this is one of the complaints that we were getting from the David Road folks.
Yes, sir. They were asking for the road to be paved and lit. So we've got the road stabilized at this point, and the trucks are not traveling that road like it was before. But this was the second half of that was the lighted road. And then the second road was another road that came in through the mayor's office as well, that they asked us to add security lights. There were some issues going on with safety on that road, so we got a price on that as well.
Any concerns on this request from engineering department? All right. Now we've got the donation from Wiregrass Autism Association. You should all have been in receipt of an email. Is that what this is about, Tammy? The email that you sent out?
And we just received some updated photographs, so I can put this in your packets. These are better looking than the rendering. This gives you a little bit more information. Especially in the fact that it called a little attention to some of the details. Yes, sir. I can answer questions now. Or...
Does anybody have any questions? Everybody have an opportunity to read Tammy's email. So I think I'll try to paraphrase. Basically, the staff is bringing us a request to approve the placement of this autism weevil in Johnny Henderson Park.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it is with a company called Beacon of Hope, and that's a behavioral services association. They are associated with the Wiregrass Autism Association. So the whole premise is to donate this weevil. The request is to place it in Johnny Henderson Park. And then I outlined some the pros and cons, some of the things we wanted to think of every angle that we could. We also spoke with Rainer to make sure that we had everything in line, and just we're asking your consideration. But I would have a lot of different information that I can share with you, and I think we've tried to think of everything that we should worry about. We think it would be a very positive, if we could give it a chance, a very positive addition to the park.
All right. Any questions or concerns? Everybody in support of this? All right. Thanks, Tammy. All right. Last item on the agenda is, as we all should know by now, we do not nominate the Healthcare Authority members. That's actually a nomination that comes from the Board of Directors of Enterprise Healthcare Authority. We simply approve that nomination, so everybody should have got that nomination of John Ryan. They're asking that we nominate Mr. Ryan for a 5-year term beginning January 5th, 2023, and that will run through January of 2028. Any concerns with this nomination? All right, that's everything we got in the submitted agenda. Everybody, or does anybody have any additions or suggest any deletions for the submitted agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on with our work session agenda. Next item is the Land Bank and Redevelopment Authority item. We've got Mr. Ben Goldman here, who has come down, and like Jonathan said earlier, this is part of our second quarter goal, which was to have a firm brief the council on the Land Bank and Redevelopment Authority options. So this is something that we set in motion with our with our strategic planning. So this is just the next step in our quest to see if this option is a viable option to accomplish our goals of reducing blight. And I'm sure Mr. Goldman has some other ideas of other things that it can do for us. So take it away.
Bear with me just 1 second.
Can y'all see that, Sonia?
Yes.
I can see it.
My father would be very, very excited to show you this watercolor painting. I don't know that was really what I wanted to spend your time on this evening.
He drew that?
He did.
Or painted it, I guess.
That's one he did a few years ago called Partners. But in his retirement, he has gotten to go back to what he loves, which is watercolor painting. And
Awesome.
he won the state watercolor competition a few years ago.
Nice.
So you've made me a hero back at the house. So I'll get to tell Dad about that too.
Well, you're on YouTube, so you can send him a
That's
link
right.
and
Yeah.
prove it.
Seems like an odd place to start the week of Mother's Day, so I'll tell Mom hello too. But hello to all of you, council, mayor. Thank you all that are here tonight. I want to start by saying, before we kind of get into the meat of these two items that I was asked to share with you about, is that this afternoon I've been here all day working with Rainer and Jonathan and Barry and Thomas, and I'm really excited about the energy that's here on a number of projects that I've have been discussing with them that I would kind of call under a lump sum of community development issues. And so these two are pieces of a number of things that your team is working on. And I would say that these are, a couple of tools that you have available in your toolbox should you choose to use them. But they're just pieces of the puzzle. And so, but I am very, I guess, I work with cities all over the state, and I want to share with y'all, I'm very excited about what your team is doing and the energy that they're bringing to it. And particularly, one of the things that I think was sort of a spirit in the room this afternoon was to really focus not on the size of any particular problem, but to really rather address what the size of the solution is you can offer now. And I heard a lot of things that encouraged me along those lines. So that being said, I wanted to start with local land bank authorities. And one of the things, really, this is not particular to land banks, but I think it is a good place to start, is to tell you a little bit about why some of these tools, all of which can be used to address blight issues, nuisance issues, property maintenance issues, and reinvestment in your community generally, why that's important. And I sort of divide this up into two things when you look around your city. And one part of that is the things you can actually see. If you see a dilapidated building, you kind of know it when you see it, right? And so that's that sort of sense of brokenness or place. But the other is that absence that it can create in your community as well, particularly if you have properties that have fallen out of use because of disrepair, neglect, tax liens that have made them unusable. That it leaves a hole in your community as well, in addition to the nuisance part of it. And I generally don't like dictionary definitions, but I do think that Webster's got it right when they talk about blight, because there is on the one hand a deteriorated condition, but I like the alternate definition better, which is something that frustrates plans or hopes. And I think that kind of gets into that sense of absence of where you're trying to build energy here in Enterprise. So I'm not going to get into details too deeply. I think we can make better use of our time. But I wanted you to have these materials for reference so that you can look back at them if you have questions. But under Alabama code, you have the ability to create a local land bank authority if the number of tax delinquent properties in your municipality exceeds 100. Now, we have, I don't know as of this afternoon whether or not we have 100 tax delinquent properties in the city as of today. If you don't, that's a good problem. But the downside to that is that it would mean you couldn't have your own Enterprise Land Bank Authority. Those numbers, we've asked that those numbers be pulled, and so we'll go from there. The good news is that, and again, we won't spend a lot of time focused on this because I think it's more, we can talk about the hows, and I certainly want you to understand what land banking is and why I think it could be a tool if it's something that you're ready to invest in. But if you don't, I think the whys of why you should do that are more important than the hows. I mean, we can package this up for you for consideration later to make it happen. I say that to say, in your packet there is an article that I pulled that I was a contributor on that got run in the Alabama League of Municipalities Municipal Journal about a year ago, I think, and it was in the winter edition on land banking. And one of the things it talks about was that in the last session of the legislature, we were able to get a number of amendments through to the Alabama Land Bank Authority Act. And particularly it allowed for collaboration with other municipalities and with your county. So even if this isn't something that you can do in your city's own name, there's still additional opportunities for collaboration. It is a distinct corporate body, so it operates separate. Once you breathe life into it, it kind of operates to an extent on its own, like other boards that are public corporations that you may have created. But I start here with authorized funding sources because to create a land bank is a commitment. And I would say, of the two things we're going to talk about tonight, land bank authorities and downtown redevelopment authorities, I would say that downtown redevelopment authorities, there's kind of no harm in creating them. They'll do as much as you fund them to do. They can really only do good. Okay. Land banks, I think, are extremely valuable and powerful tools. I represent the Birmingham Land Bank Authority as its corporate counsel. It was the first local land bank authority organized in the state, and I've had the pleasure of representing it since early in its existence, and it's really been the one that has sort of created all the processes to be able to do to get properties title cleared in court, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But those involve serious property rights of individuals and property owners. And so it's important that if you go down that route, that it has to be well funded, because if you're going to get into it, you got to do it. You got to do it right. So you'll see there are a number of places you can receive funding, but initially it's really going to be from the municipality itself, or in the case of a collaboration, from whoever the governmental entities are. Eventually, you can get some income from selling properties, but that's a multi-year process. And there are considerable expenses that get brought into land banking. There are different programs, and so if you're going to try to get property that is tax delinquent into the hands of new property owners, it just takes money to get that through court and to do all the things it takes to run an office. And I think one of those important early decisions is about properly staffing a land bank, because you need to make sure that you have people who are ready, willing, and able to answer the phones, to properly advertise the properties, to go out and inspect the properties, to get them posted on a website where people can see them, and then and to make sure your programs are running effectively. So land bank powers. What does a land bank do, and what does it do that a city can't do for itself? What a land bank does is this is not an entity that's used for demolitions or for nuisance abatement in itself. What they primarily does is it takes sort of the heart and soul of it would be your quiet title program, which is right now it can take a property that's been tax delinquent for more than 5 years, request that tax deed from the state conveys it at no cost to the land bank authority, and then it can utilize an expedited quiet title process. Now this is important because if a citizen were to go and to try to quiet title on a property in and of itself, that could be, one, lengthy in the courts, and two, it can be costly. I mean, it's often it can be $10,000 or more to get title quieted on a piece of property. But the city could do that. It wouldn't be as fast. It wouldn't
Can you
be as
define quieting a title?
I'm glad you asked. So quieting title is, if you think about it like this, you may have an ownership interest in the property, but there may be other people who are claiming an interest in that property as well. So you have a mortgage company that's out there. You may have a judgment creditor who's put a lien on the property. You may have multiple heirs on heir property where the property's gotten divided. And then you may have somebody, the city may have a demolition lien on it, or it may have a grass and weed lien. So you have all these competing interests in the property that if you were to go to sell it, or more importantly, try to get financing to build on that property, the title company wouldn't issue a clear title policy for you with all those competing interests still out there. And your bank wouldn't extend financing with all of that out there, because any of those entities could come in and try to foreclose. And even if you had assembled the various pieces, like let's say, you had acquired a tax title and maybe you got some claim on the deed title, the equitable title, you might still have trouble going and getting financing without going to court and quieting title, which is filing a complaint, asking the court to come in and say that you have all of the interest in that property. But even if you did that, let's say your mortgage, there's a prior mortgage company that's out there, or the city is out there with its grass and weed liens. All of those people would have to be paid if their liens are still valid in order to have that title quieted. And this is the real magic of a land bank authority, is that when the land bank authority takes it through the quiet title process, it strips all prior liens on the property, which means that property which is sat tax delinquent and nobody's redeemed it because it's not intrinsically valuable compared to all of these interests on the property, has the ability to be put back on the tax roster and be put back to productive use. Now, that could mean new housing stock. It could mean owner-occupied properties. It could mean additional rental properties. It could mean, someone could take advantage of that in your downtown to add new retail or restaurant space, and they can do that with an easier investment because the costs are so much lower to put that property back to use. In Birmingham, for example, they've gotten a process where they charge on your typical residential property that's not like an exceptionally intrinsically valuable property. It's a flat $5,000 fee to cover the legal cost and to get that property through so that you can end up with a clean title. And that includes your price to purchase the property. So, you think about a property that's sitting, it may be in the middle of a neighborhood, and because of those tax liens or other liens, no one's taking advantage of it. Now it can be. And we'll talk about some other uses that could come to it. But that is the thing that a land bank can do that the city can't do for itself and that no one else could do either. And in Alabama, I mentioned air property. This is sort of the problem we run into. For one,
Barry, we may be having some.
we're having some technical difficulties, but the
We do have a copy of what you're looking at.
so the but this is an example of a deed that was used to substantiate an interest in a piece of property that someone was using with a municipal utility. And I threw that in there because it shows kind of like what we deal with on sort of the chain of title in Alabama. This one, you can see the lady who was trying to claim she had an ownership interest had written her name in between a husband and a wife, kind of out in the margin. You got an expired notary seal and
Interestingly, on the unicorn.
on the unicorn paper. I mean, you know, and this is what title looks like in Alabama. So land banks are absolutely essential. And so, tell you what, I'm gonna grab my paper.
It was working great.
All right. So, in addition to being able to acquire tax delinquent properties, you can get grants, or you can get donated property. You can purchase property. There are multiple ways you can come by it. It is important to set property prioritization policies, both on acquiring property, but also on conveying property. So, what I mean by this is, for example, you'd want to put a priority on projects that are important to the municipality itself, right? Like if you're trying to engage in a catalytic development, maybe you're trying to assemble some property for industry to come to a particular part of town, or for a retail development, or for a new neighborhood or subdivision. But then probably high on your list of priorities would be owner-occupied properties, and then it kind of goes from there. So, example land bank authority programs. Again, the heart and soul is that quiet title program that I mentioned. The ability to take these tax delinquent properties and put them back to productive use. But also, you know, I have found that there are lots that maybe the only person who has an interest in using them is the next door neighbor. And so you can use these adopt a lot or side lot programs to put these properties in the hands of neighbors who'll take care of them and pay the taxes on them. That's one of my favorite things. It could be for a garden to extend their yard, maybe to build a garage, in places where you don't necessarily have to go through that $5,000 quiet title proceeding because you're not planning to build on it. You know, you don't need the bank's assistance to manage it. The other thing that can happen is sometimes you will have gone through the quiet title process, and at the end of the process, maybe somebody decides that they're going to walk away from the project, and so you end up with additional properties in your inventory, and those can be available for immediate acquisition. We've found that those can really best sort of bear a market price, and that helps generate some revenue for a land bank. So, you know, again, who can receive the properties? It's going to be either the municipality, or what's important is that someone who's not just holding it for investment purposes. So, you know, it could be somebody who's ready to build, someone who's got a plan to repair, maintain, but it's important that they go ahead and get about their work. And so on that priorities for disposition, we kind of touched on that. So, and also, you know, you have the ability to kind of control based on the experience of your program, trying to make sure you've got good stewards who are getting control of these properties. Next steps. That's a really quick overview of what a land bank is. I will tell you that it has been one of the more exciting components of municipal government I've gotten to work with, because you see these lots that you never thought would be put back to use, that all of a sudden somebody will have come in and either repaired a dilapidated structure or put a new structure on it, or maybe they're just maintaining the yard, which is not a bad outcome either in some cases. So it's been really nice. But is it the right project for enterprise? That's kind of the first question is, do you see that there would be a use for you in this, whether it's through catalytic development, through clearing title on tax delinquent properties, or just through trying to find owners who are willing to maintain their properties and pay their taxes? If that's true, then I would encourage you as that next step to sort of think through what a funding agreement between the city and your land bank might look like. And I say that because it's very easy to adopt a resolution that calls for the formation of a land bank authority. But don't do that until you're ready to fund it. And, thinking through all the things that you need to do in terms of providing them with adequate facilities to operate, and then also to run the programs. And, and that could be everything from allocating city vehicles to helping with the website to, allocating staff. But it's not it's not something that you should do lightly. I mean, you really do have to plan for it financially. And then once I think you have made budget decisions about it, then you can get about the business of organizing the land bank authority. It's a resolution. It breathes life into the corporation, and then they can adopt their own bylaws once their certificate of incorporation is on file. So after formation, the council would appoint board members. The mayor could play a role in the recommendations, but ultimately it's the council's appointments. The board adopts bylaws. They meet with constituents, develop local programs and policies, prepare forms. You need to train your local judges on how to work these through as quickly as possible, because these are different proceedings than what are typically there. And then you've got to train and engage local attorneys who can quiet title on these properties. And so I say that to say that this is not something that you just accomplish with a snap. I mean, it takes time to develop a program, but the rewards of it can be very good. So that is a super fast. I've never done that faster. We could spend quite a bit more time on it, but I hope that gives you a little bit of flavor about what a land bank is.
So I'm sure there's some questions. Sonia, I'll start with you. You got any questions or thoughts?
Let me go back. And just correct me if I'm wrong. So, where was it you talked about? What's it called?
Quieting title.
So is that basically the land bank authority can kind of, I don't want to use the word bogart, but they kind of get the upper hand to, I guess what I'm saying, where there's property where it's, let's say, loosely hung up because it's air property.
Right.
It's hard to get things settled there. Did I understand that the land bank authority with this quieting of the title it's going to trump that in court proceedings, or?
That's a great question. So what the process is designed to do is to give notice to to anyone who might have an interest in the property so that they can come in, and they absolutely have a right to redeem. And that's been actually one of the really good processes that we've seen through the Birmingham Land Bank, is you'll have people show up to redeem, and then they can end up with title quieted in their own name through this expedited process. But they're not getting off scot-free, right? So the people who've kind of contributed to the property getting burdened have to make sure that everything gets paid. The only time those liens are released without payment is if it's quieted in favor of the Land Bank Authority. And if someone shows up and they want to pay the money that's due, that is an outstanding outcome.
Let me tell you why I'm asking that, because a lot of the properties that I'm contacted about, that's a lot of the issue. You know, we can find brother over here and sister over here. We've got brother hanging out over there somewhere that's not cooperating. So they just say, you know, if you send a letter about the property, nobody wants to respond because they're all not on the same page. So am I right in saying that when I heard you say they will receive notice? So if they kind of respond, if they have that same attitude with this quietening process, that goes on record, that's makes it easier for the Land Bank Authority.
So if they're known persons, there should be an attempt to provide them with actual service through certified mail or personal service. Okay. But there's also a provision for notice by publication as well. Okay. So and the property gets posted. I mean, there are a number of things that are done to try to get actual notice to people who might have an interest.
And what part do we play in there? Is that strictly the court's process, like with the summons, kind of like, or what? How does that?
Well,
what are we responsible for, or could possibly be financially tasked with all those things leading up to that quieting period?
Those publication costs fall on the Land Bank Authority. Okay. And those costs are typically covered by that $5,000 flat fee, or whatever the purchase price is designed to cover those costs. I'll tell you, the part that ends up outside of our control, but it's one of the most expensive parts of the process, is that the court has the opportunity to appoint a guardian ad litem for some of those difficult to find heirs, and so or other people who may have an interest in the property, and the court approves that fee, and so that eats up also a portion of that.
So this is somebody that would be appointed to represent some unknown party and be their representative.
That's right.
One more question, I'll be done. You mentioned the term staff. Or what are you talking about there? Is that the Land Bank Authority? Or is that who the appointments are? What's the staff portion of that?
So I think that there are essentially three jobs that have to get done to run a Land Bank Authority. Mm-hmm. And that is, you got to have somebody who's doing admin and answering the phone. You have to have somebody who's in charge of the programs, who's kind of like an executive director for the program. And then you have to have somebody in an inspection role who can go out and review these properties and make sure, both on the front end, we try to avoid claiming or taking properties that are occupied. And so, site inspections to sort of see what the situation is, but also on the back end to make sure that people have followed through on their maintenance and development plan when they said that they would. So that can be done in one of a couple ways. It can be accomplished either through the assignment of city staff, or it can be accomplished through employees of the authority itself. And so, those are decisions that have to kind of get weighed out based on local resources and availability.
And I assume also just the scale of the authority itself.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, obviously in Birmingham, you're talking about thousands of properties, whereas here, we're not sure yet if there's 100. So its scale is very important.
Eugene, you got anything?
There's a lot to absorb here, but I do think this is very interesting, and it would be most interesting to me to find out how many properties the City of Enterprise has that would fall into this category. And that would help me determine whether or not it would be worthwhile.
I know it's been requested, so hopefully we'll have that number soon.
All right. Greg, what you think?
Well, I've heard some presentations on this at our events we went to previously, but I think the one thing that I want to get some clarification of, you said when you do the title quieting process. So someone has a lien on it, like a mortgage holder or whatever. Do they also have the opportunity to redeem that property? Or
They could.
Okay.
They could.
All right, Scotty?
Yeah, mine had already been mentioned about the staff and then the number of properties. And the staff that what you have up in Birmingham, is that absorbed by the city staff? I mean, is this something, when you say somebody answering the phone and stuff, could that be the engineering section or something, or is that a conflict, or we're adding more on that plate? It's better to have a whole separate little section of 3, 4, whatever, it depends on the numbers.
I will tell you that has been an evolving process over time, but the city, there's city employees who are assigned to the land bank, and that has worked better sometimes than others, but it is right now they're humming pretty well, so they're doing a good job.
Any other questions? So I had a few. Y'all have asked some of mine. So obviously you said it could be kind of piggybacking on Scotty's question. Any combination of city staff and resources completely. So the board would be an independent board, but they would be borrowing resources from the city, up to and including a completely autonomous authority. Right.
That's exactly right. But I do believe, and the reason, essentially slide number 1 was about funding, is it when they're getting started, it's essential for them to be successful.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines, I think if you're going to commit to it, and it sounds like you're strongly urging, if you're not going to commit to it, then find some other tool in the toolbox. So if you're going to commit to it, that probably looks like some form of dedicated staff, at least a part of their time dedicated. So let's just take a community like Enterprise, which I realize you're not an expert on Enterprise, but you have some familiarity with us. In your experience, after the authority matures, could it be expected to actually run a revenue neutral model without using some sort of funny math as far as economic impact and all of those things? Or is it going to be in perpetuity a budget line item that we just accept, much like we accept Parks and Recreation, as a public good that if we're not going to do it, then nobody's going to do it, so we've just got to dedicate this money? I know I put a lot into one question.
No, I think it goes back to the question earlier about scale. And so, if you were to make it, and again, this is based on what I would expect the scale to be just within the corporate limits, I would expect that the properties over time would pay for themselves, but the staff and resources would likely not, at least for some period of time. And where you might change the dynamic on that is if you collaborated with other municipalities in the county to help share in some of those costs, possibly. But I'm not just frankly and directly, I'm not recommending that at the outset until you kind of get set up and going.
So if we have the 100 properties, you would recommend going at it alone to begin with, if we qualify.
To begin with, if you can.
Yeah. The makeup of the board, can a city councilman or a mayor sit on that board?
The mayor can you can designate the bylaws you have a lot of flexibility in the bylaws that you create. Again, there are limited examples right now around the state, so not to harp on Birmingham, but as an example there, the mayor has an ability to serve or to have a designee on his behalf. Other council members, per their bylaws, are not allowed to serve.
So that's just in Birmingham.
That's in Birmingham.
But nothing.
That is, you have creative license.
Gotcha. Are there any other cities of comparable size in the state? And we're bumping on 30,000. Are there any other cities less than 50,000 that have land banks that you can think of?
Well, Gadsden has formed one, and it's I think, again, this is why I kind of go back to funding at the outset. I mean, you either got to be all in on it or not. And so I don't, City of Fairfield has also formed one. So there are other cities who have, and I know there are others contemplating it right now. But it is why I raise a distinction of having a land bank and having a successful land bank are two different things.
Yeah.
So
I just want to piggyback on that question that Turner just
Yeah, go
asked
ahead.
with the cities that you did name. What do you think their primary reason? Because these cities, Birmingham is a lot of industrial. What are you seeing that they're using or their purpose for doing it for? Was it to community development or for is the city? Are they just using it for property for their use, or is it just more so side lot disposition?
I really couldn't.
They don't have no reason. It's because I'm asking that because you touched on commitment. Of course, there's funding. So I'm thinking the intention of what you want to use it for has to really outweigh all of these other things that you're speaking on. Because if we look at properties that are nestled in older neighborhoods, like my district that I represent, they're older neighborhoods. So if we look into this and we see that the majority of these properties are going to be best used for more side lot disposition, more so than other retail or anything like that. So I think as I'm listening at this, it's a lot to take in. And I think a lot of the taking in before you even get to the funding or to get into the dedicated part is to see where, like Eugene said, do we have 100? Where are they located? What's going to be there? Are we interested in areas of that? Because this sounds intricate. And that's why I asked about the other cities. How are they, if other cities, or if we look at it as we go to looking at it, how are we going to use it to benefit the growth of the city more so, or not more so, but just weighing the growth of the city as opposed to beautifying it? Because land bank might not be necessary if you just need to clean up or something. I'm just throwing, what you're.
But the only way for us to get control of that property would be true control would be to run it through something like this. Right?
I get it about the control, but I'm also still.
Because we've been writing letters, we've been mowing their grass.
But I'm saying you still got to look at in my opinion, just. When you're saying a commitment, just making sure that the intention is measuring out what's required. It's going to benefit the intention.
I think
we'll support the intention.
I think we'll know more when we get some of that data back on the tax delinquent properties, and that's not the only source of properties that you can put in the land bank, but it's going to be the predominant source.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking on my next question is more of a statement.
Yeah. So one thing that we had talked about earlier is that it is also on the 100 properties. You only have to hit it at the time that you make the declaration in your resolution. And if it drops back down, so be it. So what I have suggested, not knowing what the numbers are going to be, but knowing that is something we're watching carefully, is even if you are below 100 today, the taxes become due October 31, and then they're delinquent after December 31. So I would suggest that if it is something you're serious about, if you're close but not quite there, you take a look at it in early January, and you may very well have hit that number.
Yeah, and obviously the goal would be to decrease that number once you launch it, right?
100%.
Yeah,
That's right.
So, more of a comment than a question, and along the lines of what Sonia was thinking. But in my mind, one thing that this might be useful for is, towns like Enterprise, if you study the growth trajectory, say over the last 100 years, when I guess subdivisions, modern day subdivision as we think of it, probably came about in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. So those first generation subdivisions are coming towards the end of their life if we didn't move past that in the last 20 years or so. So towns like Enterprise, unlike your Birmingham suburbs, have limitless potential to just go take down a peanut field, put in a new subdivision, and as you have seen, Enterprise continues to expand outward and hollow out within a few miles of where we sit right now. So the activity isn't going on back here, over here, to Tanya's point, in District 1. Are we going to encourage that? Allow is probably a strong word, but continue to encourage this outward expansion and continue hollowing out, or do we want to at some point say, what role does the government play in limiting this hollowing out? I mean, is that a land bank's role? Or
I have four letters that I think will best illustrate the answer to your question, and that is HGTV, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
I mean, we probably all go to bed, or our spouse goes to bed watching HGTV, right? It's these shows, and if someone has the ability to come in and take a house that is very dilapidated, and they can get it for the lot and the home for $5,000, and then they can put in, maybe $20,000, $40,000, $75,000, and have a very nice, totally refurbed home that then they can use for themselves, or sell, or rent. It makes it very economically to their advantage to do that, and so there will be an appetite. I think the appetite will surprise you, but again, what the inventory is, we'll have to see. But people will jump at those opportunities.
Yeah. So my last question, because you already said Jonathan, we're actively working on ascertaining kind of what the size and scope of our problem is. It sounds like
we are. The Revenue Commissioner's Office is closing out their year right now, and they asked to have a little more time to get those numbers. But yes, the short answer is, I think they said they had sold 16 at their last auction, but that's only the amount that was sold. It doesn't tell us, what was in January of this year.
Yeah.
So those are the numbers we're trying to get, but they have to write a program for their, software system to go back in and pull those. And so they just asked for some time.
Gotcha. So then my final question would be, in your experience, is this when the Land Bank Authority hypothetically goes to quiet a title, is that an extremely controversial issue, or is it, because to your point earlier, we're talking about somebody's property here, or are the vast majority of these just simply, almost a friendly type condemnation?
If you've taken care in setting up your program, and again, it takes some time and care to do that, but I don't think it is controversial, and has largely not. I think people have really been excited about it, in part because, for example, we make an effort not to go after occupied properties. There may be lots of reasons those taxes aren't being paid, and there are a lot. I'm not saying that is a great situation, but there are other ways to deal with that. The other thing is, again, there's lots of notice along the way, and so people won't be cut out of the process. They'll have an opportunity.
So we're not just going in and stealing somebody's property. There's plenty of due process and notice, and typically the person has long fell down on their obligations to the community. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Is everybody at least generally comfortable with at least moving forward?
Got some homework to do.
Yeah, discussing next steps. Obviously we'll do this. Probably have quarterly checkups on this and just.
It's interesting. The information that you gave us.
So, did you say that you could also get property where people just donate the property?
Can.
So, someone had a piece of property that was dilapidated. They didn't want to spend the money to fix it up. They could.
Yes. If I would tend to tell you either not to take it generally unless you have the a use for it, or you believe you're going to be able to find a purchaser for it. But yeah, they could.
Downtown redevelopment. Was that something we were going to discuss briefly?
It is, and I can do this as I know we spent a bit of time on land banking.
We've got 15 minutes left. 14 minutes left.
So if you flip to about halfway back in your packet, you'll see that there is another handout after the article on downtown redevelopment authorities. And the first page is simply a screenshot that I took from your website that lists your existing municipal boards, which include an industrial development board. And so I mention that because there are, three boards that may have sort of similarly sounding names, but I'd like to take a second to sort of explain a little bit of the difference. And I think it'll help highlight what a downtown redevelopment authority can do that the others can't. And not to say that, the others have very important purposes, but this one, again, offers some additional tools. So there's the industrial development boards, there are the commercial development authorities, and then the downtown redevelopment authorities. And those industrial development boards are really created to construct buildings for lease to new industries. There was a while of this was under the Cater Act. At the time, municipalities couldn't do similar sorts of projects for industries coming in. Now municipalities can do them themselves, but there is, experientially, industries tend to prefer to deal with industrial development boards. But the idea between an industrial development board or a commercial development authority, and a commercial development authority is really the mirror of an industrial development board, except that it can deal with commercial projects as opposed to an industrial and manufacturing, things of that sort. But both of those were really designed to construct projects for immediate turnover to some other party. The difference, the key difference with the Downtown Redevelopment Authority is that it actually also has the ability to operate projects, and that gives you a wide number of additional powers that you can work through. So if you look at that page about Downtown Redevelopment Authorities, again, these are separately incorporated boards. They exist independent of the city. The city council does appoint members to it. You would approve articles or a certificate, the form of the certificate of incorporation. But it begins with you have to have at least 3 members. They serve for staggered 6-year terms. Municipal officials can serve, and whoever is serving has to be a qualified elector of the city. So that incorporation, though, is kind of an unusual process from the other two, in that it begins by at least 3 of your citizens coming and filing a petition to the council or an application asking the council to adopt a resolution creating the or authorizing the creation of the authority. And so you then pass a resolution either approving it or denying it. And if you approve it, then they go ahead and they file their certificate of incorporation, and that's the beginning of the corporate existence. So you got to have at least 3 directors. You could have, you can set whatever number you want, but they have to be divided into groups of 3s that get on staggered terms. So you'll see sometimes cities that may have 6 members, sometimes cities that will have 9 members. Obviously, you don't want to get too stretched thin across your board appointments. So just as you would expect for other boards, they've got officers that they elect amongst their own number. They do, as a municipal board, they're operating under the open meetings law, but they are not subject to the direction of the council. So they stand on their own. Generally speaking, they are subject to competitive bid laws. However, if a project is not using government funds, then it's not subject to the competitive bid law, which in some cases you may structure deals that don't. They're also not subject to state taxes or to state usury laws. So that not being subject to state taxes allows one of these boards to acquire property that is held tax-free, and then they can lease it out while receiving payments in lieu of taxes. In other words, essentially what are those rent payments? So you can structure very favorable deals to attract all sorts of businesses into your development area. And it has the effect of essentially, to the extent of where you set those payments in lieu of taxes, it's kind of a workaround on a tax abatement on ad valorem, for example. If it's given at a discount, doesn't have to be. So what are redevelopment projects? It could be acquiring property, buildings, structures, facilities, etc. But it has to be done within the development area, which again is set by the board in conjunction with the direction of the council. Any fixtures, machineries, equipment, furniture, other property, so that you could even take a business that's already located here, who's trying to retool, maybe expand their facilities, and help them achieve that. And then all the projects, and I think this is an important distinction, particularly for enterprise, which is that if it is in your downtown central business district, which again is that development area that you're going to set, then it could be for any industrial, commercial, business, office, parking, utility, or residential project. If you go outside of the downtown central business district, which again is that development area that needs to be defined, then it would have to be for any of those things except for, it couldn't be for a residential use. So,
and there's some definitions of what a central business district are, right? I've seen those in other grants, and is there a pretty standard, or is that already set?
That's going to be something that you'll have some latitude in getting to define, and I think you would want to try to draw as big, kind of cast as big of a net as you could, because it allows you to invest more into the surrounding area. So, yeah,
but there's got to be some logic
yeah,
to that.
There is, yeah. So again, what can be done with the projects? You could sell them, lease them. You could hold a mortgage on one, and you can obtain financing for them. but also you can apply for grants to fund these projects. So it could be downtown infrastructure, for example, that you're trying to invest in. You can enter into contracts with other governmental entities, which can be important in getting these grants. And you're able to extend credit, which could be through any number of forms. And again, to require those payments in lieu of taxes, which, if you're doing that in that case, has to be done with also the involvement of the council. So that the project location has to be, of course, within the corporate limits of the city, and then to really, you really also need to be in that development area, which is defined as any business district of the city which is not more than 3 miles from the central business district and shall include areas predominantly for business and commercial purposes. So you can have projects that extend beyond, but that's where you get into those, to that prohibition on residential projects. Typical responsibilities, you'll see a list there, but essentially these are the cheerleaders and investors for your downtown and the central business district and the surrounding areas. So property analysis, land and building acquisition, project planning, development, project management, grant writing, promotion, marketing. That's a pretty extensive laundry list. Obviously, you know, that's a full-time job if someone were to try to do all that. That's just sort of what I would call a menu. Again, unlike the land bank where you have to kind of get it right, I would say any of this you put into your city, you know, good for you, right? I mean, there's no harm that comes from any of those things. So what can the city do to assist the authority? And this is, I'm not suggesting this up front, unlike the land bank, but over time, you may be called on to lend or donate money, perform services, donate property or sell property, and do other things necessary to revitalize and redevelop the central business district. And I think that gives you a vehicle to sort of support, you know, this recruitment and retention of business in enterprise in ways that you might not be able to do directly with the council. You can fund the authority, which then has the ability to do those things. All right. Well, that's it in a very tight nutshell, I think. So
we've got a couple of minutes before we need to move on with our agenda. Any questions on the Downtown Redevelopment Authority? We'd ask him to brief us on that. Great.
Is this a vehicle that could be used similar to what some cities do and have like an extra, for lack of a better term, sales tax for a certain district that goes into a fund that has been used, special tax district that goes into a fund used for grants to redevelop an area?
So those are referred to as TIFs, or tax increment financing districts, and those are something that the council could do on its own, and those are great. I mean, if you have a project that you're trying to support, and for everyone's understanding, what happens is you create that tax increment financing district, which could be contemporaneous, you know, overlaying with your central downtown business district. A lot of TIFs are, and then as the tax value increases from that property, as the tax revenue goes up, the TIF district is able to claim some of that increase, which is then reinvested into that district.
So it's not necessarily a new tax; it's just the incremental increases in the absolute dollars collected within that district.
Yeah, was that what you were asking about, or was that, or no?
I think so, until you just said.
But it can also be. Aren't there some districts that you can actually add a half a cent, or?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But nothing precludes, to answer his question, nothing prevents the redevelopment authority from capturing those dollars.
No, but I think for those tax, either for the creation of the TIF or for special tax assessments, I think those, I may be wrong, but I think those would have to go through the council.
Come through the council, but then we could grant
Yes.
the
then
same
you could-
amount
yeah,
to them.
absolutely. Yes.
Anything else? All right. Did you have any closing comments or?
No, thank you. Thank you for your interest. And again, I'm very excited about what your team's working on, and I'm excited for what's to come. So,
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Goldman, and we will, I'm sure, be in touch. All right. We've got some fire personnel discussion.
Council and Mayor, I think you got a sheet that looks like this, an Excel spreadsheet in your packet. So if you recall last year during our budget meetings, one of the requests that was not approved in this year's budget was an additional request by Chief Davis for 3 additional firefighters. And with that, we've looked at it over this year. We didn't say a hard no. I think everybody agreed that we just needed to wait. That request is going to be back in next budget year for the fire department. But much like last year, if we would like to move forward with hiring those 3 officers, they would have to go to school and training, and that deadline comes before October 1, before you'll have a chance to consider that in the budget year. And so the mayor and I spoke. We checked with Leanne on what the city finances were, and it is something that we are recommending and to move forward with, and also something that we can afford. However, the caveat being, we don't know what all the other departments are going to request in next budget year, and neither do you. So with that, we're still making that recommendation. We think that even if we racked and stacked all the requests, this is something that we would support come September when we do our budget meetings. But we wanted to go ahead and present you with that information on the cost. I think it's $192,222.46 fully burdened for those 3 positions. And I'll let Chief Davis talk about the need for those and refresh your memory on what he's asking for.
I appreciate y'all letting me come back and talk to you about this. Obviously, I'm a big believer in it. I think it's important. I just wanted to touch base real quick. I know we briefed last year, but just so that we can touch base real quick, if you have any questions in the meantime, I can answer those. We based the number of personnel that we're interested in having, all fire departments for the most part, especially in the United States, on NFPA 1710. You may recall that's what governs what the expectation should be for us to get to a location, which has to do with station distribution, as well as the number of personnel that should arrive on scene. Now, their recommendation, as I've told you before, is 4 per engine, all right? And that's quite a bit of ways from where we are now. Just to put that into perspective, departments that do or are able, we can look at Dothan. Obviously, they're a much larger department than ours, all right? That's kind of apples and oranges. Troy, I believe when we spoke last, they had 16 per shift. All right, that's not total for the department, but per shift. Now they've had 18 approved, and they're currently hiring those.
How many engines do they have?
They have 3 stations. We have 4. So each of those stations, us and them, have an engine per station. They also have a ladder truck, like as we do, and they staff it basically the same way. They actually have an additional person on their ladder truck. When they're low, they back that down. Ozark has 3 stations as well. They have 15 personnel. All of these departments are able to, at a bare minimum, right? And keep in mind, we're focusing on the fact that we also have to let people off. I don't want you to count the numbers and go, oh, well, they've got enough personnel. Whether it's us or these other departments, they have to let people off. That's just something we have to do. So as a bare minimum, adding these 3, they're not going to get us to the 4 per engine. This is just so that every single one of our engines has at least 3. As the rule, we will have people sick. We will have long-term surgeries. We will have those kind of items that from time to time we will have to drop back down to 2. But my goal, and obviously what I'm asking your assistance for, is to make sure that we're never intentionally putting an engine on the road to a scene with only 2 personnel on board. It's just a safety thing. Now, I can go into ISO and all that kind of good stuff, which use the same stuff. But in truth, and I told you this before, to me, this is more of a safety issue and an efficiency issue for our crews, more so than the ISO. I think we're going to be fine on ISO. I'm more worried about how we respond to our citizens and what we're doing with our personnel.
Okay.
I know he mentioned the 192,000. You also have in your paper there for this year, the remainder of this year, it was going to be $34,940.29. That would be the additional if we were able to get them, and that's for 3 pay periods prior to the end of the fiscal year.
And you think that 34 can be fit inside your current budget?
That's
Right.
my hope.
Yeah.
That's my hope. Don't ask for a promise, but that is my plan.
So, to make sure we're all on the same page here, no, y'all aren't asking for action tonight. You're trying to get a feel for where the council is on this, and then y'all are going to bring us something in the near future. To act on.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping, because it has been a while since we spoke, I'm hoping that if you have questions, you can inundate me with those questions. Turn up the heat, and I'll bring you any answers that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the right thing, and obviously anything that you have or you need from me, it's going to be a priority.
Well, I know you and I spoke about this recently, so I think I'm up to speed on where you're at. Does anybody else have any
I was going to say the
questions or
sooner
comments?
is better than later because of getting them in training.
Yes, if
we
we
wait.
do not get them in ahead of time, and that's the only reason I'm asking for it now.
Mm-hmm.
School, what we call rookie school, fire candidacy school, actually starts September 5. All right, so we would have to have at least 3 pay periods to be able to hire them. We'll start the process prior to that, obviously, to actually get them a start date. That'll give them approximately 2 weeks before they would actually start going to get their gear, get acclimated, and then start. If we wait and you approve for fiscal year 24, those personnel can be hired, certainly, but they won't be able to be certified until, I'm going to say, somewhere around late May, June, as opposed to having them certified and
next
able
year.
to be used early. Yes.
So we're talking about
Yes,
next
absolutely.
summer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And really with just 2, one may be the incident commander. You got one person doing whatever, but with 3 now, you got that captain or somebody can be it with 2 people as a buddy system.
I don't want Jonathan to tackle me for taking too much time, but you're absolutely correct. So we talked about that at the meeting as well. And you guys have done, you don't realize probably what you did by allowing us to change our command system, right? By adding that one captain to Central, right? But that person is supposed to be in charge until either somebody senior or another engine gets there with personnel. As it stands now, if you have typically 2 personnel is on the west side of town because they have the lowest number of runs.
That's the airport.
That is the airport station. That's correct. So if they have a fire in their territory and the first one's on scene, you don't have somebody in charge. You do, technically, it's their responsibility. But you have 2 people getting off of an engine who, instead of being able to do what other engines can, are both trying to scramble just to get everything set up for an attack, for a rescue, for a RIT team, for taking care of exposures. And that is really, I don't want to use the word unfair. It's not like we're doing it intentionally. It's difficult, and it's not near as effective as being able to have that additional one person.
Right, and on the west side, isn't there a requirement for 3 out there? So because of the FAA, because of the regs?
That's true. So if I were to say 90% of the time, that's wrong. I was about to say a statement that was inaccurate. If I was to say 70% of the time, West Side Fire Station has 2 personnel, that would not be far from it. But I could also tell you that a lot of times, East Side Fire Station has 2 personnel. That is because in order for us to meet the requirements of what Arista needs, what we have agreed to support their mission, we have to move that personnel to the slower station because of the rules from NAS 3306, which
Is that only while they're operating?
that is while they're doing certain items. Now, it's quite often and common, but yes, that's hot work, flights, fueling. There's a list.
It's not
of it.
24/7.
No, sir. No. Because of their building and their operations, we don't have to have 24-hour operations like, say, Andalusia used to with their group that was very similar.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
So you might have any concerns of Chief of this proposal, and it's also it's going to be coming in the form of a recommendation from the mayor and his staff.
We've kind of touched on
I
it,
said, you certainly have my support.
Thank
I
you,
think
sir.
you need 3 men on the truck.
and we've touched on it at in some conversation prior.
Yeah, I mean, if we've been paying attention, this isn't a surprise. We knew this was coming. So.
That definitely was not my intention.
All right. Well, sounds like looks like if you'll bring this to us in an upcoming meeting, looks like it's a good chance we'll look on it.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please reach out. Let me know.
All right. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Pickleball discussion from Barry. Jonathan.
So I think bottom line is we're danger close. We had pickleball bids open, a little high based on our budget estimate, 40% high or so. I'll let Barry cover that. I think we've got some solutions that we can continue to work through. So before we bring that back to you, which I think would be over the next 2 to 4 weeks, so the next 1 or 2 council meetings, we'll have something for you to consider. But Barry, can you talk about the options, like if we have lights, don't have lights, and kind of just see what that.
Yes, sir. So we bid the pickleball court with a base bid to do the construction of the courts themselves. We had an alternate to do the installation of lights, and we had a price from Musco Lighting, which is we can directly get to through government bid for the lighting themselves and then engineering fees. So we looked at, when we opened bids, we had one bidder that bid on that project, and it was Beasley that's doing the PV Park, the soccer field complex right there, right next door, or right down the road from it. Because we had one bidder, we can negotiate with that bidder scope and fee for what we can do. And we are in discussion with them right now about what options are on the table. And they're opening up their book and showing us really where all their numbers are, from grading work to the courts to fencing to a water fountain. What does that cost? And we're going through saying, well, if I'd known that was going to cost that, I wouldn't have put that in the bid. So we're going down and whittling that thing down. We're also looking at what we can do in-house. So, for example, the driveway turnout, I've got a number now for what that costs, and we're looking at what it would cost us to pour that out in Public Works and trying to get a number that would be more amenable towards our budget line item. So we're looking at, we have originally proposed for Musco Lighting, which is what we use at the rec center. We're also looking at other lighting solutions, which might be more of a typical LED lighting with a knob where you turn it on for an hour. At the end of the hour, the timer turns itself off. You crank it back up for another hour, more traditional setting, so that we don't turn on every single night. There's no reason to run the lights if nobody's there using it. So we're going through all those alternatives, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'll have some final numbers back from the contractor and some alternatives to what those options look like. I think we can get that number down. It's just what makes sense to propose to y'all for consideration.
All right. So what can we expect in the coming weeks on this? You think you'll have a recommendation soon?
I think we will. I just wanted to hear from the council kind of, obviously if budget is driving this, lights make a big difference in terms of cost, but also in terms of usability for the feature. So just kind of get a feel from the council about kind of what your priorities and understanding what has been bid, what's the alternate, and we can strip down those numbers and present them all to you, but we'd really like to know what's important in this project for you.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'd like to. Have we reached out, or can we reach out to those pickleball enthusiasts, the organizations, around town that have donated, the parks and stuff? Say, hey, we're going to do this much. Can we do a fundraiser, bake sale, whatever it might take, around the city? Because I've heard a lot of different fundraisers happening for different events and stuff. So maybe this is one where a group or a couple of groups can come in and say, yeah, we like lights. We can do it. And the timer thing, I think, is perfect. I've seen those before. But, hey, maybe we can help out by donating or whatever for that.
Just an order of magnitude,
If
so
we
you know
can
what
do
we're
that.
talking about. Just base bid, right? I think there's room here to reduce this number down, but from base bid and engineering, you're talking about a $600,000 type number. Lights are somewhere in the $150,000 to $200,000 just to add lights to that court. So that number could be upwards. This is true bid numbers of $750,000 to $800,000.
And what was our budget number?
500,000. I think we can get that number down, and I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things that we can do that can bring that number down significantly.
Billy, I mean, what's your thoughts on? I mean, we need lights on the courts, right?
The uses of the courts are going to be determined whether or not you have use of night.
That's right. I had my staff pull some numbers. The play is mainly between the hours of course, 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, all day long, but majority is 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Our numbers have gone up to anywhere from before we moved them to Donaldson Park, we were behind the rec center with the two old tennis courts. We only had two courts. Average play was maybe 10 to 20 players each time. Now we're up to just daily 20 to 35. So it's almost double there. And now we're up to about every day of the week. So we're actually the play amount of people playing. We're looking at 140 to 245 players. They could be Mr. Johnson. You and I go out there twice a week, and we're getting counted both times. So we got to keep that in. But majority of the time is evening play because they're getting off work. They're coming out.
6 months a year, the courts wouldn't be used very much.
Correct.
If we didn't have lights.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And probably more people coming out from work when it starts would like to play.
That's correct.
Lunchtime time.
That's correct. Majority of them. Yes.
I mean, I think we don't need to. If we're going to offer pickleball courts, we need to offer them and look at how we can best offer them and not have some mess out there. We got to have lights. If we're going to have a low budget pickleball, then why bother? We don't do that with our other programs. So we don't need to look like riffraff with the pickleball, but we need to be diligent in getting all the things that's necessary for the pickleball athletes to play pickleball adequately. Not going to have them sitting out there with flashlights. That's crazy.
Car lights.
And the thing is, Mr. Mott here is mentioning that there's things that he can do to cut costs, but he can cut it, but some of it's going to have to come back. But what's coming back is going to be a savings to the city on some of the, the costs that he can look at. Whereas now the city and staff can come out, Public Works, Parks and Rec can come back and add some stuff, but that'd be additional cost, but not nearly as much as what he can get cut off right now.
So I think what I'm hearing, consensus from council is we need you to come back to us with the best numbers we can do without sacrificing the overall quality of the project.
Right, we're not going to be frying.
And then let us make a decision on whether to proceed or not.
So my intention is to work with the contractor, negotiate what I can down, and bring back some options of if you want the Cadillac lighting system, if you want something that's more of a generic without a name brand lighting system that's designed, still give us good lights, or if you I guess those would be the two options. We want lights, but I do want you to know that the lighting is a significant number.
Right.
And it is 8 courts. I mean, this is not. It's not like one tennis court. This is 8 courts, and it's set up to mirror over on the other side to add 8 more in the future if we decide we want to enlarge this facility. Yeah. So 8 courts is a large project. Each one of this, just so you know, just it has a boundary fence around the outside, and it has smaller fences in between each court, so it keeps the ball on the play court as it is. So this is a very well thought out design. I think our consultant did a good job laying this out.
All right. Well, just come back to us in the near future with,
Yes,
with
sir.
those recommendations.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So we got a housekeeping item here, Jonathan. So 4th of July lands on a Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to see what the council's pleasure was on
What-
that. It's a city holiday.
So what's y'all's recommendation?
I think we looked at maybe Wednesday of that week as an alternate date, or Thursday of that week.
So I know what we've done in the past is when we do a Wednesday meeting is to do that at noon, right? Isn't that traditionally what we do? That would be my recommendation. Is anybody opposed to Wednesday at noon?
I agree.
Jonathan, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
I saw a bunch of nods there. So now, the only thing officially we have to do is the notice, right? So, all right. So Wednesday at noon. All right. Airport ground lease.
So if you look in your packets, you'll see First Amendment to ground lease. I'll let Rayner talk about this from what's in the lease document. But essentially, if you recall, a company purchased, I think it was Sanders Capital, purchased the ground lease and basically the structure that Arista Aviation's in at the airport in the last 18 months or so. With that, they've come to the city and asked for an extension of this ground lease, particularly because they spent a significant amount of money to acquire it, and they would like to be able to maximize profitability of their acquisition. Now, I think we talked about this once before, that they were looking at doing this. The biggest point in this is that this would be mutually beneficial, in my opinion, for the city and the leaseholder. In that, if their tenant ever decides to move or relocate or go out, they have a vested interest in, same as the city, to recruit and backfill that space. And I think there are provisions in the lease, and I'll let Rayner confirm that, but if it were to go dark or in disrepair, that it would revert back to the city. So I don't see anything wrong with that, but the terms of the lease would go up 29 years. Is that right?
29 years would be added. So right now, the lease is for 40 years from 2013 with two 15-year options. This would change the lease to the 40-year term plus three 15-year options. So then you add 14 years. And I know you wonder, why does it add up like that? It's because you cannot have a lease in Alabama longer than 99 years. So this is not anything that requires your action tonight. It's certainly not on the agenda for the city council meeting. We just wanted you to be aware of the request. And my recollection is I think we've been paid what we're supposed to get paid. Our loan has been paid off.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we just wanted you to be aware of it if it's something that we might put on the agenda for you the next time for formal consideration.
Any questions tonight? I know this may be new to some of us, but all right. And we've got one last item here, Dolly Parton Imagination Library request. You referenced this in your report to us last week.
I did. Council, so in discussing with the mayor, we've had a couple of requests. I know one formal request came before the council early into our fiscal year last year from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. We had just passed the budget. So that they weren't really eligible during our appropriations process to be even considered for an appropriation for this year. They had another event that's coming up on June the 10th, I believe, this year, and they asked if the city would be interested in sponsoring that event. Talking to the mayor and talking to our CFO, we thought in fairness to that entity, since they were not eligible, they weren't an entity here in Enterprise at the time during the appropriations request, we would look to see if there was some amount that we could recommend to you to appropriate one time for not this event that they're having on June 10th, but to Dolly Parton Imagination Library for this fiscal year. And then subsequently next year and future years, if they would like to, request additional funds, they would need to do that through the normal appropriations request process. And so with that, the mayor and I spoke with Leanne, and we felt like a $1,500 appropriation to Dolly Parton Imagination Library for this fiscal year would be appropriate. And so that's what we would like to move forward with if there were no issues on the council.
Any thoughts on this? Everybody remember the presentation we received from Ms. Pinuel?
Was
sounds like a good program. Any objections to the mayor's and Jonathan's request? All right, so y'all can move forward with. I guess you'll get that on a future agenda, or is
we might. I'm going to check and see if we have funds that we may be able to allocate somewhere in the budget. But if not, it will be on a future agenda. Yes, sir.
All right.
And I do have one other thing on the work session that was brought up, and I may need Rainer back here again, but it seemed like we had some requests, and I don't understand the real language behind it, Rainer, with the ADVA and state agencies not being able. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's something really I need to speak to the council work session about instead of.
You mean an executive session?
Executive session, excuse me. Yeah, that's.
So are you requesting an executive session tonight?
I am.
Is this something we can handle in 10 minutes?
Probably can. I've got probably 4 things all related to litigation or legal advice counsel.
Would it be more efficient to wait until after to have an executive session?
It probably would. I'm sorry to say that. But
well, then you okay with that, Jonathan? So what we'll do then is we'll adjourn and reconvene in work session after our regular session. All right. So what we'll do is we'll just we'll recess our work session right now, take about a 10-minute break, and be back here at 6 o'clock for our regular session, unless somebody's got something they want to discuss over about 3 minutes. Everybody good? All right. So we are recessed until 6 o'clock.
I end up with mine in my plastic every time I take it off. But when I take it out,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. If you would please stand with me for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. We have Pastor Matt Jordan from Wesley Chapel United Methodist Church.
Let's pray, friends. Father, we thank you for this time to gather together as the city council and on behalf of the city of Enterprise to continue making decisions that are better for our city to continue to be the city of progress. Lord, give the committee and the time together tonight discernment on how best to do this and use city assets and funds in the best ways amenable for our city. Lord, we are thankful for their representation of our communities and pray that you continue to give them the strength and perseverance to do so. Lord, we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Council, you have in your packets the agenda that we discussed in the prior work session. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the city council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the city council. I'll now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We now have the part of the meeting called Privilege of the Floor, which allows members of the public that are present tonight 3 minutes to address the council. I will remind everyone that the council's comments are reserved for the end of the meeting. You'll notice on our agenda. So we'll refrain from commenting and dialogue until the end of the meeting. So is anyone here for Privilege of the Floor? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please come forward and just state your name, tell us who you are, and take your 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Art Estrada. I live in the county, but I'm within the general area or vicinity of Bama Slam. And I'm just here to raise awareness of what we're going through in that community with the not necessarily the concerts and everything that happen during reasonable hours. It's after midnight and beyond that I'm concerned about, and I'm wanted to raise awareness. I was told that, or I've been informed that Bama Slam has been, it falls under the jurisdiction of Enterprise now to provide security and things like that, and safety, rescue and things like that from the city. And that's why I'm talking to the city council about this. The other night, last year we had a lot of issues, and one night in particular, it was very loud, and the sheriff and the police chief resolved the situation with Bama Slam to the point where Mr. Gilley went on Facebook and apologized to the community and said that would never happen again. Well, a week and a half ago, around midnight, my windows, and by the way, I live 3.3 miles north, due north as the crow flies, and my windows rattle. And we endured this until midnight, and we were laying in bed there, and it just continued on. So around 12:15, midnight 15, I called the sheriff's department, And I said, is there anything that can be done? Because I don't know how long this is going to go on. And the lady, the very sweet lady, I don't recall her name. She said, there's nothing we can do. There's no noise ordinance in the county. So I felt very dismayed by that. And then the next night, not only did it go beyond midnight, it went to 3:30 in the morning, and that was from Sunday to Monday morning, a school morning. So I'm like, how is it possible that someone can disturb the peace like this, or an organization, not someone, but an organization can disturb the peace, and there's no recourse. And so I spoke to the sheriff and the chief. They've been marvelous, by the way. I'd like to publicly thank them for the way they've stood up for our communities. And they've met with Mr. Gilley and representatives of Bama Slam. I understand they've come to an agreement, but I feel like without something that is an ordinance or something like that, this could happen many times again. In fact, I asked my wife, I don't do Facebook. She went on Facebook and found out that that last weekend, what was scheduled was a DJ with deep tech bass. And if you don't know what that is, you're in your house, you don't hear music at all. You hear boom, 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 boom all night. And so here, and what scared me was that they have a 4-day event, Memorial Weekend, and that's fine. I'm not against Bama Slam, and I don't want you to think that. I want them to be reasonable. This one says, instead of saying, we told you, this is Memorial Day weekend party. We told y'all we're bringing the noise. They don't say we're bringing the music. And if it was music, I like music, and I like people having fun, but they bring the noise, okay? And so, again, I just wanted to raise your awareness that maybe we need, and by the way, there is an ordinance, and thank you, Scotty, for helping me with this. But there is a municipal ordinance in Enterprise that may not apply to my house that's in the county, but it says, and this falls under sanitation and health. I would have never thought about looking there, but it's under nuisance. And it says noises generally, and this is section 11-7, Code of Ordinance for Enterprise. It says it shall be unlawful and constitute a nuisance for any person to make, create, or maintain any unreasonable, loud, disturbing, or unnecessary noise or noise of such character, intensity, or duration as to be detrimental to life, health, comfort, or repose of any individual within the city or its police jurisdiction. So within the police jurisdiction, and I was informed that Bama Slam does fall below that under Enterprise. So, and the last thing, I can't find it right now, but it had to do with if you read on, it talks about amplifiers, and that because I thought it would be I thought it can't be possible for me to sit in front of one of your homes and blare my radio in front of your home till 3:30 in the morning, and there be no recourse for you. Okay, if you lived in the county, or So I'm going to meet with. I've talked to my county commissioner, and I'm going to meet with the county commission next week. But I thank you for your time. I just wanted to raise your awareness about, and I'm not asking anything unreasonable. I want mutual respect. And those of us that have chosen to make that our home, we've lived there over 30 years now, and to make that our home, I don't want it to be concerned about every weekend having to stay up all night hoping that the booming will stop. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr.
Tell me your
Estrada.
name again, please.
My name is Dr. Arthur Estrada.
Thank you.
Estrada. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Estrada. Anyone else here to take privilege of the floor?
I'd like to say that I agree with this gentleman. I live on
So-
the wrong.
Sir, yeah.
I think
What?
everybody can hear me.
No, please come forward.
I'm good at speaking up.
Well, we've got people watching online.
Well,
you could speak into the
Anyway,
microphone.
my name is Wayne Sims. I live on Highway 51, right before you get to 122 there. And I'm over a mile away from this, and I sit here in my living room. My doors are shut, my windows are shut, and here I am trying to watch a little program on TV, and you say boom, 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 constantly. And they turn that bass wide open. They turn the bass down, and they turn the music down. Everybody can still hear it if they don't everybody run their mouth to each other. And of course, you know they're going to do that. But if they want to hear the music, they'll shut up and listen to it. If they don't want to hear the music, they'll talk on. But we'd appreciate it if something is done. We don't want to go no further, talk to nobody else. It started here. It should end here. Y'all, it's up to y'all to take care of toning it down. Have as much fun as they want to. We don't care. Do whatever they want to up there, as long as they keep it on the land where they're at. I keep mine on my land where I'm at. They can keep theirs on their land where they at. And we thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sims. Anyone else want to take privilege of the floor? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to staff reports. Chief Moore.
So let's first address Mr. Estrada and the group out there on Highway 51. Yes, the city has a city ordinance, and it does go into the jurisdiction. That is 11-7 of the booming music and stuff like that. The question comes is where Bama Slam actually joins Coffee County, of where the jurisdiction ends and begins. And can I issue a citation to somebody that's outside of the jurisdiction because something happens inside? So let's back up and talk. Last year, we had an issue with the same thing, and I was sworn to by a couple that it was the production. It was production. It won't happen again. It'll never happen again. We promise. We promise. This year, I met with them twice. The same production company that was out there 2 weekends ago. Met with them prior to it, and they assured me music would end at 12:30. And every night except, well, they said Thursday night and Sunday night the music will end at 12:30 because that was the main complaint that I got the year before. That did not happen this year. That also was not the only problem that we had with this company that came out to deal with Bama Slam or whatever else. They failed on a lot of things that they promised that they were going to do. So I was in the first meeting, myself and Sheriff, a couple of the our staff members were in the meeting where it got a little heated, and as the sheriff so wisely said, just don't come back. And they said, we won't ever come back. The second meeting we had was last Thursday. Again, the sheriff and I went and met with Mr. Gilley and explained the noise ordinance and what we're willing to do. And that is that the music every night on Memorial Day weekend or any time will end at 12:30, no later than 12:30. I don't care what time, what day of week it is. I think that's reasonable for people to have a little bit of fun. There is a way that they can violate that city ordinance, and that is approval by the chief of police, which I have given churches and stuff like that stay up, want to have a revival or whatever else, or have music or downtown events, whatever else, they can get a waiver to that. However, if something happens out there, loud music, whatever else, all I can do is issue a citation. That's all and they'll come to court, pay their fine, and that's it. There's no other recourse that I have other than just issue a citation. So I think the best thing that the sheriff and I had decided is try to be diplomatic in this, explaining to Mr. Gillian he fully understands that he has people around him that will end him long before government can chip in. So that's kind of where we're at. I've heard the complaints loud and clear. We will make sure that the music ends at 12:30, other than maybe at the saloon, but that goes on every night, every week anyways, and very seldom being heard. But that group of people with the booming and everything else has asked to never come back. They brought a lot of problems, and we can go in executive if we want to talk about it, but it's done and over with. There was many arrests made that weekend, so that's kind of where we're at.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Any other staff reports? Did I see submit? No other staff reports back there? Okay. All right, moving on to old business. Review and consider bid recommendations for sidewalk rehabilitation. I introduce and call for consideration of a recommendation from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to award bid requisition 2023-03 for sidewalk rehabilitation to Lewis Incorporated for a unit price contract not to exceed $246,000. No other bids were received. Do I hear a motion to adopt this recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, we'll review and consider Resolution 051623, Sewer Utilities Relocation on Highway 167 North. I introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 051623 for providing to approve Supplemental Agreement Number 4 for utility relocation cost for the state of Alabama, acting by and through Alabama Department of Transportation for the relocation of sewer utilities on Highway 167 North in conflict with the state's construction of project number STPAA-A115900. Resolution 051623 further authorizes the mayor to execute the agreement contingent upon ALDOT approval. Do I hear a motion to adopt this resolution?
I move that we adopt resolution 051623.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider authorizing the mayor to execute a grant agreement with ALDOT concerning an airport hangar. I call for a motion to authorize the mayor with review by the city attorney to execute an agreement with the Alabama Department of Transportation for funding assistance in the amount of $500,000 to construct a new corporate hangar at Enterprise Municipal Airport. Do I hear a motion to approve this authorization to execute the grant agreement?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Bars Design Solutions regarding the airport hangar. I call for a motion to authorize the mayor with review by the city attorney to execute a professional services agreement with Bars Design Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $162,835 for engineering design and bid services related to the construction of a new corporate hangar at Enterprise Municipal Airport. Do I hear a motion to authorize the mayor to execute this agreement?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now introduce an ABC license request from Folklore Brewing Enterprise. I introduce a request from Folklore Brewing and Meadery, LLC, DBA Folklore Brewing Enterprise, for an ABC manufacturer license located at 621 Bowleyville Circle, Suite 19, and call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for June 6, 2023. There'll be no action taken on this tonight. We'll now consider a request for permission to purchase equipment from Parks and Recreation regarding an infield machine. I introduce and call for consideration of a request from Billy Powell, Director of Community Services and Recreation, to purchase one Toro 2040Z Sam Pro infield machine from Jerry Pate Turf and Irrigation at a cost of $22,845.90. The equipment is a budgeted item in FY 2023. Do I hear a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the request. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider a street lighting modification request for Coon Street, Andrews Street, Clay Road, and David Road. I introduce and call for consideration of a request from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to install the following street lights at a total monthly cost of $167.40. 10 31-watt Cobra Head 3700 to 4700 lumens fixtures and associated equipment. Do I hear a motion to approve this request?
I move that we approve the request.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider accepting a donation from Wiregrass Autism Association regarding a weevil statue at Johnny Henderson Park. I call for a motion to accept the donation of a commissioned weevil statue from Wiregrass Autism Association and further authorize the statue to be placed in Johnny Henderson Park. Do I hear a motion to accept this donation?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the nomination to the Healthcare Authority. I introduce and call for consideration of a request by the Board of Directors of the Enterprise Healthcare Authority to approve the following nomination to the Healthcare Authority of the City of Enterprise. John Ryan for a 5-year term beginning January 5th, 2023 and ending January 4th, 2028. Do I hear a motion to approve this request?
I move that we approve the nomination submitted by the Healthcare Authority.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mayor, you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. This week is National Police Week, and I would like to take a moment to recognize the men and women who serve across the country, and especially here in Enterprise. We appreciate what they do to serve and protect our community. I encourage you all to take a moment to thank an officer when you see them out and about this week. Thank you to everyone that came out to the Bollweevil Block Party and to WTDY for choosing to highlight Enterprise as part of the Hometown Tour Series. We're proud to share all of the wonderful things happening in the City of Progress. We are grateful for the opportunity. We had a record turnout for the festival in the park. Special thank you to our park rec department and all of the volunteers who put on such a wonderful event for our community. This Saturday, we have some special events at the Farmers Market. It's the peak season for kickoff. This year, we'll also have a farm to fork shelf showdown. You can find more information about these events on our website. Don't forget to follow up on Facebook for updates. Enterprise graduation is next week. I'd like to offer my congratulations to the class of 2023. As you take this next step, continue to work hard to represent yourself, your family, and the City of Enterprise as well. We celebrate your accomplishments and wish you all much success. The local Veteran Service Organization are planning a memorial event on Friday, May 26th at 9 a.m. Everyone is encouraged to come out to honor and remember all the soldiers who died doing services to our nation. All City of Enterprise offices will be closed on Monday, May 29th in observance of Memorial Day. No garbage will be collected on that day. Look on our website for the updated collection schedule. Finally, a reminder that the barricades downtown are there for everyone's safety. Please use them and only cross Main Street at the designated crosswalk.
Ms. Sonia, you have any comments?
Good to see everyone out tonight. We certainly had a good work session discussion about our land bank, so that was really interesting. If you can tune in and check that out later, that'd be good. Thank you, Dr. Estrada and Mr. Sims, for bringing that to our attention. Mr. Sims, that's my kind of citizen energy that you bring right there. I appreciate that. So everyone have a good weekend. Good week.
Mr. Goolsby?
I was very happy to see that the people out on the David Road community are going to get some lights. Happy to see something in progress for them. They've had their difficulties recently. Thank everybody for coming tonight.
Mr. Padgett?
Thank everyone for coming tonight. Ditto what's already been said.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, thank you for everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for all our citizens that are watching online. Again, thank you to our awesome Enterprise Police Department, all the officers out there. Again, thank you for serving and protecting our community. Art, Dr. Estrada, go way back, but thank you. And Mr. Sims, again, thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention. We'll see what we can do. And great job by all our city workers each and every day. God bless. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thanks to everyone. Thanks to staff. Certainly the citizens, Dr. Estrada, Mr. Sims, and I see I've got some company with you too. Thank y'all for coming out and exercising your civic duties to bring awareness to those things that you think will benefit your community. And I appreciate y'all working with the sheriff and with the police chief on coming to a resolution. Thank you. The sheriff, I see him out there. We meet every first and third Tuesday if you want to start joining us. But we are about to adjourn our regular meeting, but we will reconvene in work session. If you want to hang around for that, we've got to go into executive session to consider some legal issues and potentially some economic development issues. But anyways, we'll reconvene in work session as soon as the room clears. We are adjourned. Thank you. I think we're settled there. Might want to double check me.
I have to tell Tammy.
Rainer, what all are we going into executive session for? Economic development. Just leave them on until we'll have to come back out here. Yeah, we'll go in the room. We'll come back. Yeah, just leave everything hot. All right, if we could, we're going to reconvene in work session here. This will only take about 20 seconds, but I'll declare us back in session for a work session. Council, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session regarding litigation, legal advice from counsel, and economic development matters. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, with a motion and a second, I will say I think this will probably take 20 minutes.
20 minutes, and don't expect any action.
Yeah. Of course, we're in work session, so of course we'll take no action. We don't expect any further discussion after we get back, but we should be back in about 20 minutes. All right, with a motion and a second on the table, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll be back in about 20 minutes.
Hold on, and I'll give you a copy of the resolution and the
Thanks. The cameras are rolling, but the lights are just a second.
My mic is not hot, is it? Okay. All right, we are back from executive session, and we have no further business, so we can stand adjourned.